The year is 600 AD. The world stands on the cusp of profound transformation. In the West, the memory of the Roman Empire is a fading dream, its lands carved into a patchwork of fledgling kingdoms. In the East, two titans, the Byzantine Empire and the Sasanian Persian Empire, are locked in a decades-long struggle, exhausting each other in a war that will have consequences neither can foresee. This final Byzantine-Sasanian War, which raged from 602 to 628, was a conflict of apocalyptic scale. It was not a mere border skirmish, but a total war that drained the treasuries and manpower of both empires. The Sasanian king, Khosrow II, fueled by a desire to avenge his former Byzantine allies, achieved stunning early success, capturing not only the Levant and Egypt, but also sacking Jerusalem in 614, carrying away the True Cross, Christianity's most sacred relic. This act was a profound symbolic blow to the Byzantine world, shaking its belief in divine favor and its role as the protector of Christendom. The war bled both empires white, leaving their garrisons depleted and their populations exhausted and demoralized. Across the globe, in China, the newly established Tang Dynasty is poised to usher in a golden age of culture and power. And in the Americas, great civilizations like the Maya flourish in sprawling city-states. But it is from a region long considered a quiet periphery, the Arabian Peninsula, that a storm is gathering. A spiritual and political movement will erupt with such force that it will redraw the map of the world. This is the story of that century, the years 600 to 700, a period that forged the world we know today. Our story begins in the arid landscapes of Arabia. At the dawn of the 7th century, it was a region of nomadic Bedouin tribes and a few prosperous trading cities, like Mecca. This city, a hub for caravan routes, was also a center of polytheistic worship, its Kaaba housing idols of numerous tribal deities. It was into this world, around the year 570, that a man named Muhammad ibn Abdullah was born. Orphaned at a young age, Muhammad became a respected merchant. Around the year 610, during a retreat to a cave on Mount Hira, he reported receiving his first divine revelation, delivered by the angel Gabriel. These messages, which he continued to receive for the rest of his life, formed the basis of the Quran. Their central theme was radical for its time and place. There is only one God, Allah, and humanity must submit to His will. This message of strict monotheism, Islam, directly challenged the polytheistic and commercial establishment of Mecca. Muhammad and his small group of followers faced persecution and hostility. In 622, they undertook a migration, or hijra, to the city of Yathrib, which would be renamed Medina. This event was so pivotal that it marks the beginning of the Islamic calendar. In Medina, Muhammad was not just a prophet, but a statesman and leader. He forged a new community, the Ummah, based not on tribal lineage, but on shared faith. After years of conflict, he and his followers triumphantly returned to Mecca in 630, cleansing the Kaaba of its idols and rededicating it to the one God. By the time of his death in 632, most of the Arabian Peninsula had been united under the banner of Islam. What followed was one of the most astonishingly rapid expansions in human history. Under the leadership of the first four caliphs, the successors to Muhammad, Arab armies, fueled by religious zeal and a desire for conquest, burst out of the peninsula. They faced two superpowers, the Byzantines and the Sasanian Persians, both severely weakened from their own colossal war. The Sasanian Empire, which had endured for 4 centuries, crumbled with breathtaking speed, completely conquered by 651. The Byzantines fared better but suffered devastating losses. Syria fell in 636, the holy city of Jerusalem in 637, and the wealthy province of Egypt in 642. The Islamic Caliphate now stretched from Libya to the borders of India. The Byzantine defeat at the Battle of Yarmouk in 636 was a tactical masterpiece by the Arab general Khalid ibn al-Walid. It shattered the Byzantine army in Syria and opened the whole region to conquest. The loss of Egypt, the empire's wealthiest province, was not only an economic disaster, but it also cut off the main grain supply to Constantinople, causing social and logistical challenges for decades to come. The speed of these conquests was fueled by the exhaustion of the local populations, many of whom were alienated from Byzantine rule due to religious disputes and heavy taxation. This rapid success, however, also bred internal division. A dispute over the succession to the caliphate led to the First Fitna, or civil war, from 656 to 661. This conflict created the foundational split between Sunni and Shia Islam. Out of its ashes rose the Umayyad Caliphate in 661, which moved the capital to Damascus and established a dynastic imperial rule that would continue the wave of expansion. The seeds of this conflict were sown upon the death of the third caliph, Uthman, in 656. His assassination created a power vacuum. Ali ibn Abi Talib, the Prophet Muhammad's cousin and son-in-law, was acclaimed as the fourth caliph in Medina. However, his authority was immediately challenged by Muawiyah, the powerful governor of Syria and a kinsman of the murdered Uthman, who demanded justice for his predecessor. The dispute was not merely political, it touched upon the very soul of the new Islamic State. Who had the legitimate right to lead the Ummah? The ensuing conflict culminated in the bloody Battle of Siffin in 657. After a tense stalemate, the two sides agreed to arbitration, a decision that fractured Ali's support base. The Shi'at Ali, or Party of Ali, believed leadership was a divine right belonging to the Prophet's family, and that the community had erred in choosing the first three caliphs over him. Those who accepted the arbitration and the legitimacy of the previous caliphs would eventually form the basis of Sunni Islam. This foundational disagreement over leadership and religious authority has echoed through the centuries, shaping the destiny of nations and the faith of millions. While the Caliphate was rising, the Byzantine Empire, the direct continuation of the Roman Empire in the East, was fighting for its very survival. At the start of the century, Emperor Heraclius ascended to a throne in crisis. The Sasanian Persians had overrun Syria, Palestine, and Egypt, and in 626, their armies stood at the very walls of Constantinople. In a daring and brilliant campaign, Heraclius took the fight to the Persian heartland. For years he campaigned, finally crushing the Sasanian army at the Battle of Nineveh in 627. He recovered the lost provinces and the sacred relic of the True Cross, returning it to Jerusalem in a grand ceremony in 630. It seemed a victory for the ages, a restoration of Roman glory. But the triumph was tragically brief. The provinces he had fought so hard to reclaim were the very first to fall to the Arab armies just a few years later. The empire was in shock. Heraclius, the great victor, lived to see his life's work undone. The loss of Syria and Egypt was not just a territorial blow, it was an economic and spiritual catastrophe. These were the empire's breadbaskets and its most ancient Christian heartlands. Yet Byzantium did not fall, it adapted. Facing a constant existential threat, the state militarized. The old provincial system was replaced with the theme system, where military districts were governed by generals who settled soldiers on the land. This created a loyal, defensive army and a more resilient, compact state focused on its Anatolian core. The ultimate test came between 674 and 678, when a massive Umayyad fleet and army laid siege to Constantinople itself. For 4 long years, the city held out, its massive walls and the secret weapon of Greek fire, a liquid incendiary that could burn on water, repelling the invaders. The successful defense was monumental. It halted the Arab advance into Europe from the east for centuries and ensured the survival of a Christian bastion in the east. Far from the chaos of the Mediterranean, the 7th century in China was a period of unparalleled brilliance under the Tang dynasty. After centuries of division, China was reunified, and under emperors like the capable Taizong, who reigned from 626 to 649, the empire entered a golden age. The Tang expanded its territory deep into Central Asia, re-establishing control over the vital trade routes of the Silk Road. Its capital, Chang'an, became the most populous and cosmopolitan city on earth. Merchants, monks, and emissaries from Persia, India, Japan, and the Byzantine Empire walked its streets. It was a vibrant melting pot of cultures, religions, and ideas. This era saw a flourishing of the arts and sciences. Woodblock printing was developed, porcelain perfected, and poetry reached an apex that would be revered for all of Chinese history. The government was organized through a sophisticated bureaucracy staffed by scholar officials selected through civil service examinations, a system that promoted merit and stability. This cultural vibrancy was exemplified by the epic journey of the Buddhist monk Xuanzang. Driven by a desire to obtain original Buddhist scriptures, he set out in 629 on a 17-year overland pilgrimage to India. He traversed the treacherous deserts and mountains of the Silk Road, studied at the great monastic University of Nalanda, and returned to Chang'an with over 650 Buddhist texts. His return was a sensation. With the emperor's patronage, he dedicated the rest of his life to translating these scriptures, a monumental scholarly effort that profoundly shaped the development of Buddhism in East Asia. His detailed travelogue, The Great Tang Records on the Western Regions, provided China with its most comprehensive account of Central Asia and India for centuries, a priceless work of geography, ethnography, and history. The latter half of the century was dominated by one of the most remarkable figures in Chinese history, Wu Zetian. Beginning as a concubine to Emperor Taizong, she navigated the treacherous currents of court politics with ruthless skill, eventually becoming empress consort, then regent, and finally in 690, declaring herself emperor of a new dynasty, the Zhou. She remains the only woman to have ever officially ruled China in her own right. Meanwhile, in Western Europe, the picture was one of fragmentation and slow consolidation. The Frankish kingdom of the Merovingians, spanning modern-day France and Germany, was the largest and most powerful state. However, its kings were often weakened by endless civil wars and partitions of the realm. Real power began to shift from the monarch to the mayor of the palace, an office that would eventually serve as the springboard for the rise of the Carolingian dynasty in the next century. Across the Channel in Britain, Anglo-Saxon settlement had coalesced into several competing kingdoms, known as the Heptarchy. The 7th century was a crucial period for the Christianization of England. A key turning point was the Synod of Whitby in 664, where the Northumbrian king chose to align his church with Roman practices over those of Celtic Christianity, unifying the English church and strengthening its ties to the continent. In the Iberian Peninsula, the Visigothic kingdom ruled, though often plagued by instability and conflict among its noble factions. Italy was a battleground, divided between the Germanic Lombards in the north and center and the Byzantine Exarchate of Ravenna holding onto coastal territories in the south. It was a complex, violent, but slowly evolving landscape where the foundations of medieval Europe were being laid. Undergirding this entire European landscape was the growing influence of the Christian Church. In an age of political fracture and social upheaval, the Church provided a vital element of continuity and unity. Its network of bishops and dioceses preserved the administrative ghost of the Roman Empire. More importantly, it was the monasteries that became the unlikely guardians of Western civilization. Following the rule of Saint Benedict, communities of monks dedicated themselves to ora et labora, prayer and work. A crucial part of this work was the scriptorium, where monks painstakingly copied manuscripts. They preserved not only the Bible and the writings of church fathers, but also the great works of Latin literature and classical philosophy from authors like Virgil and Cicero. Without these monastic sanctuaries of learning, much of the intellectual heritage of the ancient world would have vanished from Europe. They were the flickering candles that kept the light of knowledge alive through a dark and turbulent century. Beyond these major theaters, the 7th century was no less dynamic. In India, after the fall of the Gupta Empire, the Emperor Harsha briefly unified the north from 606 to 647, presiding over a period of cultural and religious prosperity. In Japan, the Taika reforms of 645 began a process of centralizing the state along the lines of the powerful Tang Chinese model, a transformation that would shape the future of Japanese government. And in the Americas, the classic period of Maya civilization was reaching its zenith. Great city-states like Tikal and Calakmul vied for supremacy amidst dense jungles, building towering pyramids and developing sophisticated systems of writing and astronomy, completely independently of the events shaking the old world. As the 7th century drew to a close, the world of the year 700 was almost unrecognizable from that of 600. An entirely new civilization, the Islamic Caliphate, now stretched from the Atlantic to the Indus River and was a dominant military, economic, and cultural force. The Sasanian Empire was gone, relegated to history. The Byzantine Empire, though battered and reduced, had survived its greatest trial and solidified its defenses. The Tang dynasty presided over a glittering golden age in the east, while in the west, the scattered kingdoms of Europe were slowly forging new identities. The geopolitical, religious, and cultural plates of the world had shifted, creating a new reality whose consequences would echo down through the ages into the 8th century and beyond. 8th Sa.